FICS Special Masterclass. I'm Raz De La Torre, and I'm delighted to be your host for this afternoon session. Today, we are privileged to be joined by resource speakers who came all the way from the International Christian University in Tokyo, Japan. In a short while, Dr. Craig Dennis Howard and Mr. Fabio Spano will take us into the world of instructional design cases and design case of an AI-powered gamified dictionary. Guiding today's discussions as the moderator is our very own Dr. Roberto Figueroa Jr., Associate Professor and incoming Dean of the UPOU Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. Before we delve in, we are thrilled to have a diverse audience joining us today. The session has drawn a significant interest with 414 registered participants before going live. We also have attendees joining us in person here at the CCDL Auditorium. A warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us live to feel the energy and make our guests from Japan really feel welcome. And of course, beyond our students and alumni, we are honored to be joined by representatives from various institutions. Their affiliations are now being displayed on the screen. We have participants from UP Diliman, Capiz State University, South Cotabato State College, Adventist International Institute of Advanced Studies, International Service for the Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Applications, Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology, Don Mariano Marcos Memorial State University, UP Baguio, and so many more. So thank you for joining us online as well. Of course, a special shout out to those who are tuning in via Facebook Live, YouTube, and UPOU networks. Welcome everyone. We encourage all of you to actively participate in today's lecture. Please feel free to send your questions and comments through the chat box or comments section. To give you a background of the FICS Masterclass lectures, FICS Masterclass is a quarterly series of expert-led lectures featuring distinguished academics and professionals from the fields of development communication, mass communication, and communication, designed to enhance and complement the curriculum of Doctor of Communication, Master of Development Communication, and Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies programs under the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies. The Masterclass offers valuable insights and in-depth discussions on contemporary issues and emerging trends in the field. Additionally, it covers key topics such as research methodologies, best practices, and procedural approaches. But for today, we consider this as a special masterclass because it does not follow the usual format of the program. We have resource speakers instead of a thought leader. We will not delve into any communication topic, but rather focus on instructional design. And lastly, we call this a special FICS Masterclass because we will do this specially for all the ICU UPOU fellows under the ICU UPOU Knowledge Exchange 2025. So they're all here. I hope you got to meet some of them already. And later after this, all on-site participants will be participating in a workshop. So, with that, let's officially kick off this exciting event. It is my pleasure to introduce our Dean of the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, Dean Diego S. Maranan, who will deliver the welcome remarks. Dean Diego.
Thank you, Raz. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Masterclass event hosted by the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies here at the University of the Philippines Open University. Since its establishment in 2004, FICS has been dedicated to advancing the fields of information and communication studies in Southeast Asia as well as globally. And we focus on pioneering innovative programs at conducting impactful research, and providing essential community services. Our aim is to create social impact through advancing the fields of information and communication studies. The Masterclass lecture series has been running for about 9 years, and today's session centers on, as Raz has mentioned, instructional design and the application of AI, artificial intelligence, in educational contexts. We are pleased to welcome, of course, Dr. Craig Dennis Howard and Mr. Fabio Spano to UPOU, and they will be introduced shortly by our moderator, Dr. Roberto Figueroa, Associate Professor at the FICS. I wanted to note that this masterclass is part of a week-long knowledge exchange project between UPOU and the International Christian University called Immersive Frontiers. We also acknowledge the presence of our partners from Japan Foundation, led by Japan Foundation Manila, led by Deputy Director Yojiro Tanaka. For those who are attending in person, we're coming all the way out to our pastoral corner of the country here in Los Baños. And for those who are joining us online, welcome. We look forward to an engaging and insightful discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dean Diego, for the welcome remarks. Now, please allow me to introduce our moderator for today. Moderating our session today is an educational technologist with an extensive background in computer science and immersive learning. With 2 decades of experience in IT, educational technology, and online learning, he specializes in immersive technologies, learning analytics, and gamified learning environments, making him the perfect guide for our discussion on instructional design cases, including the AI-powered Gamified Dictionary. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Roberto B. Figueroa, Jr.
Thank you, Sir Raz. Good afternoon, everybody. Magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. Minasan konnichiwa. I'm thrilled about today's masterclass presentations as they align closely with UPOU's initiatives, especially with regard to designing learning activities for collaborative online international learning and other forms of virtual and blended exchange activities. Our discussion on instructional design cases will provide valuable insights that complement many of our courses, not just in the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, but also in the 2 other faculties of study and the rest of the university. I'm sure that it will be relevant to the efforts of our participants from other partner universities who are joining us today, in person and online. I know that we're very excited to listen to our exciting talks. So without further ado, allow me to introduce the first presenter. Our first speaker is an associate professor at the International Christian University in Tokyo, specializing in instructional design and discourse analysis. With a PhD in instructional systems technology from Indiana University, Bloomington, he explores how design cases can enhance critical discourse in mediated learning environments. Bringing extensive experience in K-12 and higher education across Japan and the US, he has contributed significantly to research on instructional design and discourse analysis for mediated learning. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Craig D. Howard.
Wow. This is a fantastic culminating event to 3 days of knowledge exchange between the online students at UPOU and our budding scholars of instructional technology at the International Christian University in Mitaka, Tokyo. I hope you'll find what I have to say useful, and I hope I have slides. I'm going to tell you a story about stories. This story actually has no end, and it ends with a workshop that has no wrong answers. And I have another slide. Okay. Help me out here. Is this not on? Okay, here we go. So, do we make sure we got the right spot here? Let's go back to the beginning. Okay. So here's the agenda. There we go. Are you with me? Okay. I will talk kind of about the theory of instructional designs, which is instructional design cases, which is a way of capturing and disseminating design knowledge about how we create instruction. I will tell you the story of how we created a journal to disseminate this knowledge. And then Fabio Spano will give you an example of a design case that he has submitted for publication, and it's gone through the process that I'll talk about, which is a kind of alternative process of knowledge building as compared to traditional research. And then we'll wrap up with a workshop where hopefully you'll be able to capture some of your own innovative thinking so that you can share that with others in an easy way. After it all, we'll be tired. Okay, we're talking about stories. All of our designs have a story. It's the story of how it was created. And in that story of how it was created, there is a whole ton of knowledge. I'm going to tell you a story about stories and how we use these stories about stories to create an academic journal which works differently than other academic journals, why it's different, and why it'll make you feel better about all the classes you taught that went wrong. Everything that you hoped for that didn't quite go as you planned, everything that you tried out that didn't really work, these are magical. They're worth so much more than you probably think, if you give it a chance. But first, UPOU is making learning happen. This is why we're in instructional technology. They're doing what we're here to do. We make learning happen that otherwise would never happen. You manifest that learning. And I am learning so much, and I'm admiring so much of the things that I see happening. The magic that I see happening in these online classes, that's fantastic work. And I'm learning from it on this exchange. I'll back up a little bit and talk about the job of a professor. This is what we do. We've got our research, we've got our teaching, and we've got our service, outreach, things we do for the community and the things that we do for the university and our department and our field of study. In our research, we're supposed to create knowledge. In our teaching, we're supposed to disseminate that knowledge. And in our service, we're supposed to facilitate the creation and dissemination of that knowledge. And what I'm going to talk about today is right here. That connection between research and teaching. And it works like this. You conduct a study, you write it up, and you submit it. Some other people read that study and they decide whether or not it's good enough. Then maybe they give you some things to fix. You go off and you fix them. Then you bring it back. If they like it, it proceeds to publication, and if they don't, they tell you to go away. And then, if you're lucky, it gets published. This is not a fantastic paradigm. We were very frustrated with this paradigm because the things that go wrong are more valuable than the things that go right. This is where it comes from. I started as an English teacher. Now I'm an instructional designer and a scholar of instructional design. I started teaching in 1997 at the City University of New York in Queens, New York City. Yeah, here's an old picture, as is mandatory of all my slide decks. Some people think that's me, but actually this is me down here, about 15 kilograms lighter. At that time, I was designing and developing online intercultural exchange via email between the boroughs of New York City. Then I brought these email exchange programs to Japan from the City University of New York, and I linked my students in both countries. And we started exchanging email, and I started studying how they were learning. And then I started presenting these at conferences, and I was trying really hard. So I follow the directions, and I did complicated things like a regression analysis, and I counted the words, and I made a chart, and I presented it at a conference, and 4 people came. So I tried something else. Half of those people fell asleep. A year later, I did a vocabulary acquisition study, and I planted lexical items in their email, and then I counted whether or not they learned it. And 3 people came. They wandered in. It was the wrong room. Okay, a couple of years later, I did another method, a content analysis of the email exchange as internet-mediated language instruction, long title. 2 people came. Very nice people, no English proficiency. Then in 2005, I wrote up everything I did wrong setting up these email exchanges, and 45 people came. Why? Why was everything I did wrong so popular? A regression analysis, a frequency analysis, a correlation of any of these measures, content analysis, all of these are scientific knowledge. All of these must be interpreted to be used. It's hard to know exactly what this is supposed to mean. Everything I did wrong is real easy to understand. And that knowledge is useful immediately. When they walk out of the room, they know, I'm not going to do what he just did. That's design knowledge. You don't need to interpret it. It's right there. This kind of design knowledge is called design precedent. And you can use it right away. Design precedent is the experience of existing designs stored as episodic memory. This goes back to the literature. In instructional design, our knowledge is embodied in our experiences of creating, using, experiencing, witnessing, designed instruction. The problem with my early studies wasn't that it was bad science, even if it was bad science. The problem was it wasn't immediately useful. That knowledge generated had to be interpreted to be used, but design precedent, it's a critical component of practicing design of instruction. It's at the heart of our professional development as instructional designers. I knew none of this in 2006. And that's when I was a doctoral student. And that's when an opportunity came around. I was a PhD student at Indiana University, and a volunteer was needed. And the slide's not forwarding. You got it? You just press the button. Okay. A volunteer was needed for a column in a journal called Tech Trends. It's an AECT journal, the Association of Educational Communications and Technology, and it's a standard. It's theory and practice to it's theory to practice. It's an academic publication, but I needed publications, and if I got inside the journal and I volunteered for this job, I thought I'd have a much better chance in getting some of my own stuff published. Forward the slide. So I volunteered. Okay. The dean, I volunteered and I went to the dean's office, and she pulled out a drawer and gave me 40 USB drives. They were all articles that had been put on a USB drive and sent into the journal, and she received and put them in her desk. That's what it looked like. And this is kind of how the conversation went. It went like this. I am the editor of a regular column at Tech Trends, but I've been kind of busy. I've neglected to sort these out. It's a lot of work, and you will not be paid. This is the life of a graduate student. These submissions to the design portfolio need to be reviewed, sorted, worked out with the authors to make sure they've not been published elsewhere. Some of these authors might be a little bit angry. So I asked her, how long have these articles been sitting in your desk? She said, 2 years. Okay, that sounds scary, right? But it was a huge opportunity. All of these were examples of designed instruction and their story of development. None of them had method sections. They all had a process narrative, how the design had been put together in the form of a story, and most of them had a detailed description of what went wrong. All of them had pictures or drawings or photographs of the things that they made, how the component parts fit together in the design. They all had these detailed descriptions of what it is was created. Each was an inside look at the moving parts, the intangibles, anything that you could not see about that instruction from just attending the class or looking at it. Okay? But most importantly was that when I would send these to reviewers, the reviewers loved them. They said, we believe in this kind of research. We believe we should be sharing examples of the way we teach. They believed that what we were doing, but it didn't even really have a name yet. They all said, it's good that you're doing this. It's the only part of Tech Trends that people can use right away. So we went on and we published 2 of these articles every month for 2 years. 16 potential articles remained on USBs in my hands after 2 years when another opportunity came up. We began calling them design cases, after the cases that are used in art and architecture to teach early art and architecture students. Okay, the dean had an opportunity. For a little bit more service, she negotiated a job for me for 2 years to edit this journal and hosting for the journal online, because it had to be open access. We named it the International Journal of Designs for Learning. And this is what it looked like. And I was holding in my hands 24 reviews for 12 articles that had been published over the last 2 years. These would found the future journal. They would create what we would make. So I took all of the reviews. I took the articles themselves and threw them away. And I looked at what the reviewers believed in. What was it that was driving what they wanted to see in other designs? They wanted, first I had to get informed consent, but everyone was on my side because they knew I wasn't getting paid. So they said, yeah, analyze my data. So then I did a content analysis of all the things reviewers said over the years. right? And it came out that they want to know two things about every single design. They want to know, what is it? What does it look like? How does it work? And they want to know, how'd you make it? Where does it come from? Why'd you make it? And who the team was. So there's a description and a story. And the other essential components, they can come anywhere. Things that went wrong, the context, the influences. They wanted some sort of analysis of the reflection, but really it was two things. What is it, and how did it get like that? And in creating this journal, we didn't want to do it the other way. We wanted to do it a different way. Traditional research, the reviewer's role is to decide whether or not this piece of research is good enough for other people to read. Whether or not the researcher followed the methods. But in a design case, there's really no methods. It's a description. So the reviewer's job is to find the most interesting parts and elicit from that writer, what are the most interesting parts of this design, right? And then steer them into those interesting things, and all the irrelevant details, throw them away. In traditional research, the author should be objectified, taken out of the writing. But we don't need that when we're talking about designed instruction, because your experiences are tremendously valuable. They tell you why you did the things that you did, how it came out the way it did. So the feelings and experience of the design were valuable. We value trust and honesty more than a third-person objective write-up. In traditional research, quality is determined by the standards of replicability, generalizability, and the prestige of the journal. Oh God, how stifling. In a design case, the quality is determined by how useful that article is for the person who's reading that article. Is it going to help them make better decisions when they come along and have to do something like that? In traditional research, there's a strict structure. You have to say this, then you say this, then you say this. In a design case, no, we want to hear the story. You tell the story as best you can, and that structure is variable. It depends on the story. So it kind of looks like this. You have a standard sequence that is determined in a research genre, and it follows these steps: introduction, literature, methods, results, limitations, conclusion. In a design case, we have a lot more variability. We can put it together in those two parts. First, the description of the design, why you felt you needed to write this case and tell me about that design, the context that you created it in, what it was for, any unforeseen consequences of your designed features, tensions between things that you made that could go wrong. You try and fix this one and that one breaks. Those are design tensions. And the story. Why did you try and make this instruction this way? Like we talked about talking about this collaborative exchange as a case itself. Why did we put it together? How did we put it together? What did it look like when we were done? So the story of the design is just as valuable as the description of it. And then the influences on the designer or the design team, because no two people are going to create the same thing. So that description is very valuable. User experiences are valuable, but they could appear elsewhere. Oops, I went over the last one pretty fast. And unexpected obstacles of the design process. So the important point here is that the reviewers do not evaluate the so-called quality of the design or the design case write-up. They're not there to evaluate. They're there to support. They help the authors find the most interesting parts of the case. What a better way to write. A failed design case can result in a great case. Why everything went wrong? Yeah, it may not have been a great pedagogical experience, but man, understanding that those obstacles are there is very helpful for the next instructor that comes along. That makes for a great case. Missteps, wrong moves, disasters, logical assumptions that were proven completely off base, those are valuable things to know because we'd rather someone else go through them than us. Unlike traditional research where the reviewers act as gatekeepers, a reviewer of a design case acts as a critical friend, supports the development of the valuable precedent for readers. That was a great article by Gordon Rowan at Ithaca College. A critical friend. Okay, what you see are a couple pictures on the right. That is a design from the Steel Case Furniture Company. They're talking about how they redesigned the desk for learning that has wheels on the bottom and a different shape. They talk about how they watched learners move desks in a class to make groups, how they went through this elaborate process to determine just the angle of that desk. And yeah, things went wrong. They tried shapes that didn't work. It's much better to learn from the case than it is to build your own desk that didn't work. Those are great images from the Weber article in 213. So one does not need to know how a car works to learn to drive. You don't need to know all of the insides of this research genre to write a great case. You do not need to know how cases capture and disseminate knowledge to write a great case. You also don't need to be doing the same thing to appreciate a case. I teach the steel case desk design in several of my courses, even though we're not designing desks. But they had a great process, and that is super valuable. The takeaway from here is that the knowledge that we're sharing lives in the story of the design. It's embodied in the thing that we made, and it's embodied in the process that we used to make it. You don't need to take my word for it. And before I go to the next slide, I was thinking about this when the UPOU students were showing their digital products to our ICU students. All of this knowledge was embodied in these digital products that they were making. And the stories that they were telling about how they put it together were just as valuable as seeing the thing itself. Lots of little tiny design cases. Here's an email that I got after I published one of my early articles about a design case. It said, "Dear Craig, I just finished reading your article on what you're doing over there at IGDL. Our fields really need this. I'm going to write something up and send it to you. I think you'll like what I have to say. Jack." Hey, who's Jack? So I forward the email to my old professor. She just sent back his Wikipedia page. He's the founder of the field of human-computer interaction. He's the founding member of the Association for Computing Machinery and the head director of a place called IBM Research. Whoa. I guess that means he can just sign Jack. But you don't have to be Jack Carroll to understand that these things are really useful. I think the Philippines knows it already. In the year 2023, outside of the United States, the Philippines downloaded more articles from IJDL than any other country. It's because that's useful. You don't have to interpret it. It's right there. So here's an update on some of the things that has been going over there at IGDL since I left. It's now a top 50% publication in our field. It has 141 countries downloading articles in 2024, design cases have won numerous awards, and now they have their own category at the AERA, Association for Educational Research. In 2024, 53 were submitted, 22 accepted, 30 declined. So it's making a lot of progress from 40 USB drives till now. Things get sent in that aren't actually cases, those get rejected, and that's called a desk reject. Average time to publication is slow because the reviewers are asking the authors for more details on the interesting stuff and telling them to get rid of the other stuff. It's really not so interesting. There's a new feature. We're doing short form design cases, which are 1 to 2 pages. Just a picture of the design and a short description. That might work better. We don't know. So this is what it's all about. Documenting and sharing our instruction. Learning how we make learning happen where it otherwise would not happen. Like what is happening here online. This is exactly what you're doing. So that's what I had to say. I think now we switch to questions or we take a break. We switch to questions.
Thank you, Dr. Howard, for that very enlightening talk. I'm sure I speak for everybody here when I say it was truly insightful. At this point, we open the floor for questions related to Dr. Howard's presentation. Please feel free to share your thoughts through the chat box or the comment section of our platforms, or even among our in-person participants. You may want to raise your hand.
There could be questions online too, right?
Yep, we're collecting them now. Okay, Sir Raz?
I'll start. So I was wondering, because like, for example, although I've been teaching for a decade now as a lecturer, I only started as a full-time faculty of UPOU last September. So hearing your journey, I never had to think of my teaching that way, and I never knew that I had a lot of things that actually could fall into instructional design. But I wonder if there's any validity or like an expiration for your experiences that you can write about. Because I realized that like me teaching, developing a course that I've been doing for like, a long, long time, I wonder if I can still go back and talk about how it evolved and write about it. Or in your experience, like, does it have to fall within like a certain number of years from today that I can write about and publish about it?
You touch my heart. The book I wrote with Elizabeth Bowling is about historical instructional designs. We go back 200-300 years. Our designs are everlasting. They tell us about that particular moment in time, how people were making decisions and what they created. We covered deaf education. Deaf education has had a long trajectory all the way from sign language and for a while in finger spelling and then back to sign language, and how the designs that were popular at that time told us about what those people were experiencing. So no, there's no expiration date. Absolutely not. It also gives us a kind of a window to where we came from. Why do we do it like this? Very often we do it like this because that's the way we did it last time. But nobody wrote down the way we did it last time. So it's often a very good barometer for our decision making to take time and look at, okay, time has passed, this is the way it was. Why? That's a great piece of reflection and extremely useful. I don't see any expiration dates coming on this stuff ever.
Thank you for that very wonderful question and that answer. We have one question from our online participants. This is from Mr. Robbie Lorenzo. He asked, this scenario is in the academic setting, how does this apply to the corporate setting, like in L&D training programs?
We just had a guest speaker at ICU talk about this. I asked her, she came to talk about a design firm and how they build spaces for various different community events. And I said, well, where do you draw your knowledge? And she says, well, we keep a library of design cases. Yeah. So I think there are lots of commercial avenues and other places where designs are collected, analyzed, stored, and retrieved when they are needed and when they're applicable. It's not entirely, in fact, I would say there's far fewer of them written for academia than there are written for the commercial world, where they really don't care what the scientific rules are. They want something that works, and they want something that works now.
Thank you, Professor Craig. I will be asking on behalf of the participants and the implementers of this one-week activity that we're doing. I'm pretty sure that there were a lot of design cases involved in doing these activities, in planning for these activities. What would be your advice for us who kind of want to document this and, share this knowledge with others in the future?
Artifacts from your process are the most valuable thing you can have. The notes that you took, the drawings that you made, the outlines that you crafted before you actually put it together, they'll give you a path that led your thinking to what it eventually came to be. Pictures. If you can have pictures of things that are happening, wow, they're really useful. Drawings. How the intangible parts fit together. There are tons of things that you can't actually see, but if it wasn't there, wow, things are going to go really wrong. Like a grading rubric, how many designs didn't have one of those? So these pieces need to be collected so they can be reflected upon. And that's the process we're going to go through later in the workshop.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. We don't have any more questions from the online participants. Do we have questions from the floor? Yes. Yes, Iman? I can give you the...
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Howard. My name is Iman, and also I'm one of the ICU fellows. And thank you so much for this interesting presentation. My question goes to the flexibility of those design cases. Because now there's an approach in teaching and learning toward more ecological or contextualized learning approaches. So how can I, for example, read a design case about a specific context and try to contextualize it and apply it into my own class I'm teaching or my own kind of context or background. So how is the flexibility of those design cases, and how can I learn from this design case and apply it in my context?
The utility of a design case doesn't lie in the writer. It lies in the reader. So it's valuable to the extent that you find stuff that you can use. There's no sense in reading a design case that isn't going to talk about that you can use. But if there's something that's near, close, or on your topic, that could be very useful. Maybe not all of it will be useful, only this little part. But that's why we have a detailed description of the design that allows a reader to come in and find the part that is going to be most useful for them and get that out real quick. Well, one of the things that brought me to be excited about design cases was I used to work for Cambridge University Press, and we would present our newly written instructional materials at teacher conferences. And they would say, oh, you have to have some data. Put up a chart with some data. You need a bar graph. Okay, I'll think hard about how I can make a bar graph out of my, 2-chapter learning activity. But then when I would walk down the hallway at the conference, every single room was a teacher showing, this is how I teach this, this is how I teach that. Nobody had a bar graph. We want to see examples of stuff that you made. It's the same thing as what you're talking about. It's valuable because you pick it out and go get it. It's an external experience of a design that you could not have otherwise. And that's how you build a large design repertoire with lots of potential solutions to any given problem by having a big toolbox. And you can get that by consuming design cases, viewing lots of different kinds of instruction. Of course, you don't have enough time in the day to be involved in 50 different types of instruction. That lends utility to design cases because they're quicker to consume than actually enrolling in a different kind of course. Does that answer your question?
Thank you for that very, very useful question. We have another one from our online participants, and perhaps this will be the last before we go to the next presenter. I'm collecting some of the other questions that are coming in, and maybe we can discuss them after the break. This is the last one. Provided the research structure is highly flexible and there are parameters, are there limitations for this? Parameters or limitations for this? This was asked by Mr. Jerome Supplemento from Zoom.
Yes, there are. They can't go on forever. So we, at the journal, sometimes we keep on asking for, a very excited author has a lot to say. 11,000 words, 12,000 words, 15,000 words, nobody can consume that much. So we've broken them in pieces. So there are limitations for how much you can talk about, and there are limitations to the amount of stuff that's actually interesting. So you may want to separate pieces so someone who's looking to learn about that type of thing can find it. If you throw it all together in a 20,000 word article, the person who wants to find it probably never will. It's too big.
Thank you so much for enlightening us. Another round of applause for Dr. Craig Howard. Now it's time for us to listen to what our next presenter has to share. We talked about the concepts a while ago. Now we'll look into some examples, one particular example. Allow me to introduce our next speaker, who's a PhD candidate in instructional game design, passionate about using AI technologies to enhance educational game development, with a deep belief in game-based learning as both engaging and effective. His research focuses on integrating game design, education, and AI to make learning more accessible and immersive. Drawing from personal experiences and a love for games like Japanese RPGs, World of Warcraft, and Dungeons and Dragons, he advocates for a more playful and engaging approach to education. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Fabio Spano.
Thank you, Doctor. Hello, everyone. So, Dungeons and Dragons, World of Warcraft. What a nerd, huh? Try to be one. Let me start sharing the screen, and I will continue from when we left. We good? All right. Oh, yeah, that's me. Hello, everyone. My name is Fabio Spano, and I'm having issues with the PowerPoint. And today's presentation is called, it's my design case. Design case of an AI-powered gamified dictionary. This is what it looks like. I will go in more in detail later. It looks quite interesting, huh? I will explain like these pictures one by one later. So again, my name is Fabio Spano. I'm from Sardinia, Italy. I've been living in Japan for 8 years. I'm a Japanese drum wadaiko player. I'm a member of the ICU Wadaiko Club. This is me on stage just a few days ago. Look at this picture, I love it. I'm still on that stage, actually. And when I'm not playing the drums, I'm a PhD candidate in educational technology at ICU. This is me. I don't have a picture of myself studying, but this is a picture of myself trying to look smart and terribly failing, of course. Thank you for the picture, Iman. So, who is this guy? I'm a nerd, which was not a good thing in the past, but it's definitely a good thing now. And I learned English with games. I was pretty bad at school, to the point that my teacher decided that I was bad at school when I was in elementary school, and I believed her. And I was bad at every subject except English. I was better than anyone in English. And I never studied, not one day in my life, I can tell you. Before university, don't worry, Dr. Howard. And I was thinking, why am I so good in English? Where does this skill come from? And I was thinking about all the time that I spent playing these games here. Here we have Final Fantasy Tactics, which is my favorite game ever, and Final Fantasy VII. I spent hours and hours going through thick lines of text looking for familiar words to understand what I have to do. I remember looking, okay, go, next to the word go, there will be the place where I have to go. So I went through all the conversation in the game looking for the word go. And all of a sudden, I could speak English. That was amazing. And of course, once I became a teacher, I actually tried to emulate this amazing experience, this passive learning that I experienced by doing something that I loved. And this path took me to ICU and to my tentative dissertation title, which is Exploring the Integration of AI in the Design of Digital Game-Based Learning Solution. Multiple case study of 3 or 5, Dr. Howard will decide, instructional designs. So let's talk about AI a little bit. Now AI seems to be just generative AI, right? You think AI, you think ChatGPT. It wasn't like that when I wrote this design case. AI was different, but now AI, that's what it is, like generative AI. So let's have a little fun with it. I love teasing my AI. I call my AI Carl. His name is Carl. So it is reliable for generating ideas. I tested it. I asked Carl, this is ChatGPT. Hey Carl, I'm thinking about a paper discussing similarity with quantum physics basic principles and strictness of the interview process in Japan. I mean, what? This is impossible idea. But ChatGPT is a service, so it gave me what I asked for. Interesting angle, ChatGPT said. You could explore blah, 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 blah. Of course, I ignored this immediately. This is a proof that is not reliable. So I told Carl, hey, Carl, this is so random. This is barely passable similarities. I asked for idea for a paper. And Carl, I apologized. And I said, he said that your idea is very unconventional, and while there are some surface level similarities, a meaningful academic discussion might be difficult to justify. And I told Carl, then next time say that, okay? And Carl updated his memory. Because when you have an account of ChatGPT, ChatGPT has a memory with information about you. It will go through that memory before giving you any answer. And that's how Carl, after this discussion, updated his memory. Fabio prefers straightforward feedback of whether a paper idea is reasonable or doable. It does not want weak or forced connections. Every single account you have on ChatGPT, they have memory stored about you. And if you want to use it for your academic suggestion and idea, you have to make sure that some points are covered. Look at this one. Fabio preferred that I avoid overgeneralizing contribution or fabricating interpretation of academic sources. If this is not in your memory, ChatGPT will fabricate stuff for you. That's extremely dangerous. Of course, always read everything it gives you if you use it for your own studies. Proof everything. So now, I would like you to take your devices, if you use ChatGPT, and click on your little logo here if you use a PC. It will be on the bottom left if you use your own mobile. Click on your profile picture, then click on Setting. I suggest everybody do it if you use ChatGPT. If you don't use it, you don't have to do it. You're safe. After you click on Setting, you click on Personalization. And then Manage Memories. If you do this, I'll give you 2 minutes. Even people online, try doing that. And have fun a little bit, trying to see what ChatGPT registered and recorded about yourself. If you have trouble finding this option, you can raise your hand, I will stop by. Let's do this for 2 minutes. Again, if you're using a mobile phone, a mobile device, your profile picture will be on the bottom left, not on the top right. I see some people laughing. That's the right reaction. It's surprising what it registers. Yeah. You can manipulate this. You can tell Carl, or whatever you call your ChatGPT, update your memory with this direction. Make sure you do not make this mistake again. And you can also erase memories that you don't want it to keep. So this memory can be personalized to your needs. But I'm not here to talk about ChatGPT. I hope I did not drive your attention too far away from me. Please keep on checking your memories, your ChatGPT memory later. Let's go back to the reason why I'm here. Because I'm here to talk about an AI-powered gamified dictionary. Nothing to do with generative AI. Unfortunately, I know it's the hot topic. I will work on that later. So, this is a slide that is from Dr. Howard's set, actually. Description of the design, purpose, context, unforeseen consequence, tension, story. I mean, we've been through this already, right? So what I will do, I will give you an example on a design case I wrote. And I will just remix the order that you can see here, because the order doesn't matter much. You have to pick the order that better match your narratives. So this is the context of my design case. I did not make a design. I interviewed the designer. I interviewed the designer and wrote a design case. It was the designer's first attempt as a digital design. He used game-like activity in his classes. He's a connoisseur of self-determination theory and played a lot of Age of Empires, Civilization, and other old PC games. This is the trigger why he started exploring a digital solution. Because of COVID, his classes moved online, and he started to look for apps to teach online, and he was extremely disappointed in online solution. For example, Kahoot. I don't know if you ever heard Kahoot. Kahoot is not a game, it's gamification. We call it chocolate-covered broccoli. Because it looks like chocolate, right? You're like, oh, it's chocolate. No, it's broccoli. And the students will find out it's broccoli after the third time you use it. The design was created for young Japanese English second language learners, 1st to 9th grade, in conversational schools in Japan. Then we have a little peek on the process that is not part of the contest, don't tell Dr. Howard. It just fit my narrative, so I decided to keep it there. Problem framing. After finding no solution that helped his goal, the designer had a brainstorming with teacher and highlighted the main issues. The drilling took too much class time. Okay, COVID was over, so the classes were back in person, but the problem was still there. He realized this is not working. We're spending too much time drilling in class, because in Japan, sometimes, especially when you teach first grader, you have to imagine you might start from zero, with zero vocabulary knowledge when you're teaching English, right? So you need to drill to have any kind of activity. You need some drill or some vocabulary practice. And there was also low motivation in homework completion and lack of monitoring system. And here's the design solution. A game the learner will play as homework. A game with AI feature that provide instant feedback on spoken production. This is the context of this design case. But now, what was created? They created a game where you have to create and sustain a realm. Look at this. I'm sure it's familiar to somebody, this kind of game. You have, you can see there is a castle, kind of a castle, some houses over there, and what the user can do is can build facilities in order to harvest wood or steel or stones in order to create more facilities. This is an example of the building system. You have the well. Let me see if I can have a laser pointer. How do you do this? Oh, look. We have a well here in Japanese, a school, a wizardly school, and a hospital. But in order to, and you can also improve the gear of the avatar. But in order to do all these beautiful things, you need resources, right? Gold, metal, and wood. For example, to create this cabin, you need 250 gold and 200 wood logs. And how you harvest this material, you beat challenges. And this is one of the challenges that the designer created. In this challenge, this is a mobile game, so it's created to be used in a touchscreen. Here, the kid, the student, the user, will press the microphone, and he will have to say, "a octopus," right? The voice recognition system will evaluate the production. And if the production is considered satisfactory, the avatar will attack the enemy. With multiple correct production, the avatar will defeat the enemy and obtain gold and resources in order to improve his realm. It also, this design is also equipped with teacher dashboard, when teacher can actually assign adventure. For example, these could be decided by the teacher. Oh, these students need to review octopus. These students need to review plurals. These students need to review adjectives. So it will send actually targeted adventures. So you can decide what the students will actually work on. And for example, we can go from octopus to they walk to school together. Sorry about the poor quality. This could be one of the target phrases. They walk to school together. Or the one on the right, it looks terrible. So let's move to the interesting part, the AI features that I think when Dr. Auer presented, he explained that the important thing about design case is to find what's interesting, right? To find what is interesting about the design. And I think what's interesting about this design are AI feature. Voice recognition technology. So this is how it works. A student presses the button and says, "Oh, octopus," like this. The device records the voice recognition, but there is no voice recognition technology on your device. The recording is sent through API to where the AI software has its server. There, the AI evaluates the production. Doesn't happen on your phone. That's why you cannot use your Duolingo when it's offline, because it has to be sent via API to the servers. There is evaluated, and the feedback is sent back, correct, or so on. This is how the voice recognition technology works in this particular design. Also, an important part is machine learning. This is a game developed for Japanese 1st to 6th to 9th grade students. Sometimes they're children, right? You need a machine learning informed with voices of non-native speaker children, because a machine learning informed with native speakers will not have the sounds that a Japanese kids will make while trying to produce English, right? It doesn't work. So this particular design needed a special machine learning informed with production of non-native speaker children. And there is another AI feature that I will not talk about it now because to serve my narrative, I prefer to talk about it later, which is level adjustment. But let's move on. Now we talk about the process. Again, the problem framing was that too much class time spent on drilling needed a way to prompt and monitor drilling activities as homework. So that's how it worked. The lead designer, after brainstorming and obtaining the problem, framing the problem, had some surveys in school. Oh, I wrote surveys in school twice, sorry. The first surveys in school is brainstorm with teachers. The second survey in school is survey in schools. I apologize for that. And the survey in school is very interesting for the Japanese context because they try to understand what is better for the students. Do we want to have a fantasy setting games or something more similar to Duolingo, more straightforward? And the interesting result, they have this survey in a junior high school and in a high school in Japan. The results were, first and second year junior high school, they prefer the fantasy setting. Third year junior high school, they prefer the more straightforward version that looks like a test. And you will say, I know what you're thinking, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, the younger they are, the more they're attracted to fantasy and so on. Wrong. Because first year high school, again, they prefer the fantasy setting. Second year high school, the fantasy setting. And then the fantasy setting dropped again in third year high school. And everybody preferred the more straightforward setting. This is because, according to the designer, junior high school students have to face an entrance examination to go to high school. And all their effort goes into passing this test that will decide their future. So the closer they are to this test, the more they will like to focus on something more straightforward, more similar to the test. So this is not based on maturity or anything. It's based on the fear, maybe not fear, on the concern about this test. After deciding that they wanted to do something more fantasy-based, the designer created some sketches. Here are the sketches. Now, Dr. Howard mentioned, while answering a question, how artifacts are one very important part of a design case. These artifacts, to me, are incredibly valuable. These are the first sketches the design made the first time he actually wrote something about this design. And look how similar they are to the final product. This is not always the case, but I think in this particular design case, it's very interesting to see how his idea was well formed this early on. With these sketches, he went to a software development company to understand what's actually possible or not. And they decided to use Unity. And he learned about scope creep. Now, somebody's smiling here. If anybody here designs something, he might know about something digital, he will know about scope creep. Scope creep is when the scope of a design that you want to create is actually much more expensive than what you initially budgeted. Because this design fell for scope creep, because the designer actually chose the company who warned him the less about scope creep. And what happened is that the design cost 8 times more than was actually decided at the beginning. After the design went through the software developer, they actually added they contacted an AI provider that provide the voice recognition, machine learning, and level adjustment. And they started the play testing in school. And you know where it's going. All the feedback went back to the lead designer, and the process started again until they had something that was satisfactory enough. So let's talk about the design team. We have the lead design team. He played games like Age of Empires a lot. This is Age of Empire 1997. This is the game. You can see here you have wood, stone, and metal. I don't know if you can see here, but you have the same thing exactly. So there is not many models that inform this particular design decision. What informed this design decision was his experience playing games, was its precedent. He also is a self-determination theory connoisseur, and he often mentioned intrinsic motivation in his work. He published many games-based books for language education, and this is what he means by intrinsic motivation. This is how you start, and the motivation then aiming at something like this triggering students, it would prompt many students into continuing playing and gathering as much material as possible and so on. This is an example of the book he had. And this is how the design team expanded. Doing the concept part, we had the lead designer, the teacher, and the graphic artist, and the survey I mentioned earlier. The development part, software developer, AI provider, and public schools for playtest. And this is post-release. That is actually not part of my design case, but the design team is still expanding at this day. And now we talk about design failures. Design failures is what Dr. Auer called unforeseen obstacles and unexpected consequences. Usually when we talk about in the educational field, we don't like the word failure, right? But I think in instructional design, actually the word failure is not that negative. It means it shows what goes wrong, what went wrong, and is something that could be improved. And there is always a design failure. One of the first design failures was that there were reports of children crying after getting it wrong. This is a huge backlash because they wanted to use this game to motivate students, and yet the opposite effect, because the student will try octopus, and get it wrong multiple times. What they did, they embedded a level adaptation feature. The level adaptation, to me, emulates what a teacher do. I have been teaching English multiple times, and I try to teach English. Okay, let's try to say yellow. And the student says something completely different. I'm like, okay, let's try again, yellow. And again, the student doesn't say anything, doesn't improve. And I ask him a third time, let's try one third time, yellow. If the student fails a third time, I will not go, I'm sorry, you can't. As a teacher, I will say, okay, good try. Keep on practicing, right? The AI didn't do that. The AI said, wrong, wrong, wrong. But the level adaptation feature emulates the sensibility of a teacher. So if a student gets it wrong, have a poor production 2 times or 3 times in a row, the AI lowers the difficulty level of the production. So the following production will be counted as successful or as a pass in order not to demotivate the student. In the same way, when a student is actually very successful in his production, the AI makes the challenge more difficult. Second failure, report of students giving up if not getting 100%. I don't know what's the level of perfectionism here in the Philippines, but in Japan it's pretty high. The way the feedback was shown to the student was on percentage. And some students were like, no, I got 100% once, and if they didn't get 100% in a following tentative, they decided not to continue. And this is how they changed. They removed the percentage and they add colors and stars. You don't know how many stars you can get, and the colors are not as bad. So this actually solution helped into reducing the problem of students giving up if they didn't get 100%. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Reports of children crying after defeating cute enemies. All right, in Italian culture and American culture, I don't think that would have happened. You're playing a game, you're killing the enemy. You know what I mean? But in Japan, there's a different sensitivity. And what they do, they took the enemy and they added this as a pet. So I have a picture of the enemy. This is because the designer asked the student what's the most popular game, and the most popular game among girls was Animal Crossing. So he took a feature of Animal Crossing and he put it into this game. And this is the cute pet. It's not cute. I don't know why, but this happened. They cried when they defeated, not killed, the fox. Yeah, maybe it's too real. I guess, not too cute. So, yeah. But this, this was not easy to foresee. And the last one for today is, the last consequence is the efficacy backlash. Because this game, in some cases, increases the level gap inside the same class. Because you can play this, okay, the teacher assigns the adventures, but a student can play as many adventures as they want. They can keep playing for hours. And some students did in order to create the big realm, right? Some students didn't. So the students that actually played for, let's say, 10 hours in a week came back the following week with a perfect vocabulary. I taught you this game, and that happened. But the student who didn't fell behind even more. I call this efficacy backlash. Let's keep it there, maybe catch on, who knows? And there is no solution yet. The only solution that could be there is limiting the student usage of the game, or make sure everybody uses it. But we're talking about homeworks. Once you did the homeworks, why you should push for students using it more and more? This is a problem that has no solution yet. And to finish, I would like to tell you that today I answered 2 questions. Can we call them research question? Maybe not. But I answered 2 questions. What is it, and how did it come to be? Design cases answer only these 2 questions. Mainly these 2 questions. This is the question that a design case has to answer. This is actually Howard. If you disagree, talk with my supervisor. And I argue that no amount of playtime and no analysis of the design will have ever succeeded in providing the information, the vicarious experience, and the potential precedents that the design case have provided. Because you can play that game forever, you can analyze with whatever framework you want. If you don't have a design case, you will never understand all these things that we talk. This, for example. You will never know how the API and voice recognition works. You can play as much as you want. This kind of knowledge is not there, and there is no analysis that can help you. But design cases can help you. Design case can give you a precedent, so when you try to create something similar, you will be ready. You will know what can go wrong, and you will know what works. And this is why we do it. Actually, design cases have been accepted by AGDL for publication in 2025. And thank you so much. That's all I have.
Congratulations on having your article accepted for publication. Thank you, Mr. Spano, for your engaging presentation. I'm sure that a lot of our students enjoyed it, learned a lot. So at this point, we open the floor for questions related to your presentation. Please feel free to share your thoughts through the chat box or the comments section of our platforms. I think we have some questions already. One popular question would be, how do we get a copy of the games that you presented a while ago? How do we download them? Are they downloadable? Are they for free? Yeah.
Okay, my goal was not selling this game. All right, I know the designer is a sweet man, but my goal was not selling this game. But it is interesting. You can find it on Play Store. I'm not sure it's accessible outside of Japan, but if everybody is interested, I can give you the email of the designer. It might be on Play Store. I know it's in Play Store. The name of the game is the Gamified Dictionary. Thank you. I didn't mention the name of the game. That's how much I didn't want to sell it.
That's a language learning game, right?
It's a game for teaching languages. The interesting part is you can put any content you want in it. Like if you want to teach content for a special book, you send it to the design team, and they will add the content, and it will allow teacher to send the content to the students.
I think that example is very interesting, especially for our participants from Japan Foundation Manila, who are very interested in how they can make Japanese language education more engaging. So if you have other questions for Mr. Spano, please feel free to ask them. There's another question that actually relates to your experience. It was for Dr. Howard, actually, but I feel that it's also relevant to what happened to you.
Get ready, because if
So
I can't
here's
answer
the
it,
question.
you're on.
It's from one of our students from a design course that they're taking. This is from Mr. Menard Narca. Hi, Dr. Craig and Mr. Spano. I'm a design student and would be looking forward to working on my capstone or special project a year or two from now. You've deviated from the traditional research process, but how are we going to apply it in our case as a student who have to follow certain guidelines? So I guess this could translate to your experience as a PhD student, right? You also have some guidelines that you need to follow at your university. Did you encounter these challenges? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Okay, I'll try first, then Dr. Howard, please jump in. When it comes to publication, I encountered no challenges. I mean, the normal challenges of publication, because these are journals that actually publish design cases the way they are, so not as pure research. And for example, when it comes to finding a job, you need publications, right? And if those publications are in, as long as they're in like accredited journal, they work, they count. So my publication on IJDL will count in that as much as any other publication, research-based publication. Now, design cases are not research. So in universities, you might find some tension there. And they are research, but they're not science. Thank you, Dr. Howard. So you might find some tension there. For example, I have a really hard time explaining how design cases can work as research to scholars in the educational field, while in scholars from the media and communication, it was much easier to convey that. So yes, I think I'll give the microphone to Dr. Howard for this one.
Thank you.
It's great because there are schools in Europe that are looking into making a design PhD. Well, that doesn't make any sense, but people want one because there's all this knowledge there, and people think that PhD means knowledge. But then other people say, well, PhD means a scientific study. So that creates a lot of conflict. But there are schools like the University of Delft who are doing exactly that. So if a question comes in about a capstone project, it depends what that school decides is worthy of a capstone project. Right now, and we have a ICU student who's doing her capstone project as a portfolio, which is also not science. It's not a paper. So if the faculty is flexible enough to see that building the knowledge and extracting the knowledge out of something that has been designed is an acceptable form of knowledge building, then yeah, that would be a great senior thesis or master's thesis. It depends what they value.
And to answer that, I believe that it will fit in our context as well. So if that student will be continuing on as a Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies scholar, then we will definitely support that. That's why our students are here, to learn about this. So thank you. There's another question, I guess for Fabio this time. Thank you, Dr. Howard. What is the difference between, so you mentioned game-based learning, right?
Yes.
But there's also something called play-based learning. And there's also gamification. So maybe you can give us like more clarity on this.
All right, I'll jump on gamification and game-based learning because I have no idea what play game learning is. So, game-based learning is basically using a game in order to teach something. The difference from gamification, you can picture it like this. You have education, any courses that you have been taught or you teach. Gamification is a layer that you put on top of your education. So you have education, you have your course, and you put a scoreboard, you put avatar, you put winning music, you put points. That's gamification. You take elements from a game, scoreboard, stars, and avatar, and you put embedded into your education. Here's the deal. If the education is bad, gamification won't change it. It will stay bad, but just with some winning music, ta-ta-ta, when you get it right. Which is, again, good for the first couple of classes. Game-based learning is the education, is the learning. You use a game in order to have the students learning something while playing the game. I'll give you an example. Okay, this is a bit of a dangerous example. I take this example for Dr. Carla Souza from Portugal, but I loved it so much. Okay, let's play Monopoly. By one of the player, you're a black man. If you roll a 5 or a 6, you move too fast, you go to jail. You, the other player, is a woman. She gets half of the money. The third player is a white man. He gets all the money, double the money. And if there is a debate, the white man decides. What is this game? You just play the game with this rule. And they have the student experience these balances. And you can guess what I'm trying to teach. But teaching the game alone, like playing the game alone, is not enough. Because maybe what you learn, you should behave as a white man to success in society, right? But with briefings and the briefings, you can target what you want to teach. You talk about gender issue, you talk about inclusivity, you talk about societal issues and balance before playing the game. Then you play the game. And when you play the game, you just play the game. And afterward, the briefing. What did you learn? Why did we learn this? And so on. This is how game-based learning works. When you play the game, you just play the game. What you can do is to adapt the game before, change it, modify it in order to hit your pedagogical targets. Another example, what I do, I play a game called Mafia. You know Mafia is a role game? Yeah. So we talked about it before. We play the game and then we debrief. But when you play the game, you just have to play the game and try to connect afterwards to the students' real life. This is game-based learning.
Thank you, Fabio. Are there other questions from the floor? Yes. Can you introduce yourself before you're asking the question?
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Mary from FICS, faculty of UPOU. Probably one question, and I think Dr. Howard and I talked about this earlier. What's your take or perspective regarding sort of output-based learning versus like the standardized learning? Because just like what you've mentioned earlier, which was also an observation, third-year students sort of wanted to be like the traditional type because at the end of the day, students need to still take standardized exams. But then when it comes to skills and actually working, output-based learning plays like a major role. So I'm just really curious, what's your observation with the learners regarding that, and what's your take on output-based versus like the traditional and standard type exams?
Thank you so much. As much as I'm not a fan of the standardized examination, I know that traditional teaching and learning works for a certain type of students. Doesn't work for all, but it's the only way we teach in most places. We have one way of teaching, but there is multiple ways of learning. So what I want to push with game-based learning is what I want to do is not to change education, to take current education away and just put game-based learning. No, it's to give an alternative for those students who can actually have a difficulty to learn with traditional methods. For example, and right now in Japan and in Italy, I can talk only for Japan and Italy, favor students who have very strong concentration ability and good memory. I had neither when I was a kid. I couldn't focus. I tried hard. I remember, I was like, no, my mom was mad at me, so today I listen. After 3 seconds, my mind drifted away, and it was out of my control. So game-based learning has the power. That's actually the reason why I do it. This is a bit away from design cases. This is my personal take on game-based learning. Game-based learning has the power to take students who have different set of skills for the one required from traditional school and actually use those skills in order to help them learning. So alternating different kind of teaching will accommodate and will help different kind of learners. That's what I think about like the different methods.
Thank you. Since we're also doing this in the context of the Immersive Frontiers Knowledge Exchange project, we did an activity 2 days ago, right? We tried to experiment with the metaverse and how we can make things engaging, collaborative online international learning through that platform. Have you identified certain things that we should look out for if we're going to be implementing this for learning? Something that we should kind of try to catch when we're documenting our designs?
You're talking about the back to design case, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Oh, well, my first thought was the same. I think Dr. Howard has a similar question, and I thought about a similar answer. Like documenting is the most important thing. Like when you're doing activities, notes, pictures, artifacts, this is what has to be there in order for you to be able to actually write a story, to understand how decision-making happen, because that is what it's all about, I think. Design cases will actually help understand how decision-making happen during the design of learning experiences. And to understand the decision-making process, any artifact, any note, any post-it could be useful. So I think I like join Dr. Arwan on this one, also because it's dangerous for me to disagree. I'm kidding.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the floor before we read the last question? Going once? Twice? Okay, let me read the last question from our online participants. I know that there are others, but because of time, we have to collect those questions and share them with our speakers, and then later on, we're going to be sharing their answers to all of you. But here's the last question. It's from Ms. Hannah Plaza. Hello, Sir Fabio. You mentioned how high school students prefer straightforward learning due to their academic focus. Our group is researching an RPG for mental health wellness education. Given that college students often experience increased stress related to adulting, like taxes, career, and so on, do you believe the narrative chain technique using storytelling for memory and learning would be particularly effective for this demographic, especially considering that the game aims to teach mental health wellness practices for real-life application? Or if you're not familiar with that technique, maybe you can suggest something else.
No, absolutely. I think it works because, like, when you involve a narrative into learning compared to traditional learning, you bond to use a different kind of memory, like a long-lasting episodic memory compared to a short memory. So to me, like when there is a narrative attached to it, especially in the form of a game, it's definitely very effective. The retention ratio is much higher. When I mentioned earlier about the tension with students was because, I mean, even in normal classes, when I present a game, sometimes I have some students that don't like the idea of a game because like they think the game is not studying. There's still this way of thinking that games and studying are two opposite universe, right? And some very students that were very good at school, when they saw me presenting a game, they were not happy about it. They were like, I'm here to study, not to play a game. I am usually very strict with this. I am, yeah, and I chose this game because it's the most effective thing to teach and for you to learn. So I treat students who refuse a game the same way I treat students who refuse a textbook. It's my material, and I chose it because it's effective. But yes, sometimes there will always be some students who will actually not be happy with it at first. And explaining why we're using a game and why we're using the game the way we're using it, I think is the key to help the students accept the new methodology. And when it comes to effectivity of the effects of more narrative style, I think that actually really works very well for most of the students, for any kind of students.
Thank you. Another round of applause for Mr. Spano. Thank you as well for those engaging and very helpful questions. I hope that we all learned a lot from the exchange of ideas a while ago. Before we close, let me share a summary of what I've learned today, and I hope that you can share yours as well after this. This masterclass, led by Dr. Craig Howard, explored the evolution of instructional design cases as a distinct research methodology in education. Dr. Howard shared the journey of establishing the International Journal of Designs for Learning, or IJDL, and how it differs from traditional research in education by focusing on design precedent, emphasizing real-world instructional experience and the lessons learned from both successes and failures. The presentation highlighted how design knowledge is more immediately useful than traditional research findings, as it provides practical insights for educators and instructional designers. Dr. Howard detailed his early experience with email-based intercultural exchanges and how the challenges faced in those projects led to the recognition of the importance of process narratives, documenting not just what was created, but also how and why decisions were made. The second part of the masterclass featured Mr. Fabio Spano, a PhD candidate at ICU, who presented his design case on an AI-powered gamified dictionary, or game-based dictionary. His case illustrated the complexities of integrating AI and game-based learning in language education, highlighting unexpected consequences such as student frustration and motivational challenges. Through iterative design, his team adapted the system to enhance engagement and usability. Ultimately, this masterclass underscored the importance of documenting and sharing how learning happens, providing practical precedents that educators and instructional designers can use to enhance future learning experiences. And with that, I'd like to thank our speakers for the valuable lessons that they shared, and our attendees for actively participating in this special masterclass. Let's give a round of applause for everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Rob. Thank you to all the participants who sent in their questions online and, of course, inside the hall right now. It was really insightful. I'd like to personally think it was really something that I picked up a lot from, especially for a starting, I guess in a way, I'm also starting in my academic career. I mean, in that sense, I feel like it encourages us to be really reflexive about the entire process. So thank you for that, and I'm pretty sure my co-faculties really learned a lot from that as well. So thank you so much. We'd like to take this moment to express our gratitude to our speakers and to present the certificates. I'd like to call on Dr. Rob again. Sorry, Rob. We'd like to call on Dr. Rob again. And of course, I'd like to call on the FICS Program Development Associate for Public Service and Extension, Dr. Emily Amoloza. And Doc Emily and Doc Rob will be presenting this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Craig D. Howard for his invaluable contribution as a resource speaker during the FICS Special Masterclass on Instructional Design Cases and Design Case of an AI-Powered Gamified Dictionary. live streamed on the 20th of March 2025 via networks.upou.edu.ph. Thank you so much, Dr. Craig Howard. And of course, to present the same certificate, we would also like to call on Mr. Fabio Spano. For your insights in game-based education. Heart. Doc Ems is asking, so I think she needs a tutorial on Gen Z gestures. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Dr. Howard and Mr. Spano, for sharing your expertise with us today. I'm sure our participants learned a lot from your lectures. Last but not the least, of course, this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Roberto Figueroa Jr. for his invaluable contribution as a moderator during the FICS Special Masterclass on Instructional Design Cases and Design Case of an AI-powered Gamified Dictionary, live streamed on 20th of March 2025 via networks.upou.edu.ph, and being the source of energy for the entire week and really keeping us all engaged. Thank you, Dr. Rob. We sincerely appreciate your role as our moderator for today, but also your role for the entire week. Thank you so much. And at this point, let me acknowledge the people behind the scenes, the FICS Masterclass working team. There you go. Thank you so much for the hard work of our working team, the UPOU Codtel Educational Media Production team as well. And as we wrap up, we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's session. Please take a moment to evaluate this event by scanning the QR code or visiting the link displayed on your screen. I think this is also flashed online for those who are participating through the Zoom. The evaluation form will be open and available until tomorrow, 5 p.m. Participants who complete the evaluation form will receive their certificates of participation within 3 working days. Due to the number of participants, there may be some delays in processing your certificates. Please give us at least 3 working days before you follow up, and we will respond within 3 business days. For future FICS Masterclass lectures, if you enjoyed today and the other FICS events, please follow and like our Facebook page, UPOU FICS. And that ends our session for today. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Congratulations on this successful event for a very insightful afternoon. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.